guide your journey into Cabernet Sauvignon magnificence. Hello, welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine, presented by Pick n Pay, and welcome to Somerset West and a quiet little corner beneath the Helderberg that I'm going to be calling home for a couple of days. This is Cape Vermeer. It's a 5-star guest house that in last year's TripAdvisor Travelers Awards was voted #1 guest house in South Africa and #21 in the entire world. So how did it get those accolades? Well, it's a beautifully appointed space. The rooms are big and airy. There's a gorgeous swimming pool. The views down over Strand are terrific, especially on a bright sunny day like this. And in Richard, you've got a warm and inviting host. But it's also the proximity to so much, despite the quiet and solitude you have here. You're about 10-15 minutes from Lawrenceford Wine Estate, from Cavalli, from Tybosh, from Ken Forrester, Ehrenvale Golf Course just down the road, De Zolzer not further away either. So it's in a really, really good position if you want to hang out in a quiet but lovely part of the winelands. And that's where part of today's show is, but not all of it, because I'm also heading a little further afield. Later on, I'm at Lanzerac and tasting some slightly older Pinotage in Stellenbosch, but right now heading a little north to Mozambique and to a Portuguese Mozambican chef who looks a bit like Pete Goffe-Wood's little brother. He's a master of Peri Peri. He also loves Portuguese wine, and he brings the two of them together for me on the Nando's farm in southern Mozambique. Welcome to a rather hot and humid corner of southern Mozambique. I suspect that applies to most parts of southern Mozambique. This is a place which you have kind of been to if you've ever had Nando's, because the chili that goes into the sauce that defines that Nando's flavor comes from Machaba, this very farm not too far outside of Maputo. Now, I spent the morning out in the fields picking some chilies, and in fact I've made some sauce. It was almost edible. My very own Peri Peri sauce. I'm beaming with pride, as you can see, and I'm going to be trying it out in just a moment with some company from Portugal and Mozambique. Now, the two Portuguese friends I have both come in a bottle, and I'm going to be trying them alongside of a Mozambican who's pretty much on every billboard you see as you go around Maputo. He's the most famous chef in the country, and he's in a rather fetching outfit today. Chef Cello, welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Dan. Nice to meet you.
Tell me about this journey, because I know you're born here, you are Mozambican, but I have to say you do sound suspiciously South African.
Oh yes, well that's not my fault. My parents took me from Mozambique to South Africa when I was 3 years old, and I basically ended up in the Vaal Triangle, which is South Africa's industrial giant, where my parents had a restaurant called the Galodoro, and that's where I got my love and my passion for food, and did my national service in South Africa, spent 10 years in the deep south of Johannesburg, and then moved on to Mozambique circa 2000, and I've been here ever since, and loving every minute of it, loving the way of life, just loving everything.
Now, this is where you find yourself, and I thought you were actually mythical. I didn't know if you really existed, because everybody I spoke to at Nando's back in South Africa, Chef Cello, you must have Chef Cello's food, you must come and meet him. And they speak of you as somebody who's just so enormously passionate about what you do, and that does seem to shine through.
Yeah, well, I just love it. I mean, I found my passion late in life, because working in the restaurant and having to do the peeling of the potatoes and all the hard work itself wasn't that enjoyable. When I came to Mozambique and I started cooking for people in the homes, so many of them said, open your own restaurant, of which I tried. I didn't really enjoy the restaurant world so much, because it's a bit of a prison with an open door when you own a restaurant, you know. And so I moved on into the catering, because that's where you can entertain and you can spend time with people, and there's no wastage on food. You know, you order what the client requests, cook it, serve it, enjoy it with them, spend some time with it, and then move on.
Now that leads us to where we are today. We're at the very heart of the Nando's empire, and you've produced some Portuguese food for us. And I'm fascinated about what we're going to be doing, because the pairing of Portuguese food tends to be with beer. Most people think, right, peri peri, a nice cold beer, that will sort me out. But you've made some dishes and you've got some Portuguese wine for us. Is that something you would often have in Mozambique?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the Portuguese left behind a tradition of wine drinkers. They'd find all the older gentlemen, the older Mozambican, he actually enjoys his wine with his food. I mean, we're talking about the guys that were around in the 60s and 70s before all this happened in Mozambique. Those guys still enjoy their wine, mostly the Portuguese wine. However, South African wines are also available on the market here, but this being Portuguese dishes, the trinchados, which is the chicken trinchado and the beef trinchado, is very much enjoyed with a good white wine, which I really enjoyed. Duas Quintas, both the red and the white are good wines. So I think that pairing the white with the chicken would be fine, and pairing the red with the beef would also be nice.
All right, well, let's try the first of these. It is the chicken. I'll tell you what, let's pour a little of that wine, because
Okay.
it is 107% humidity at the moment and
Okay.
about 36 degrees, or as the Mozambicans call it, mild. That will do nicely.
Taste.
Oh, nice temperature as well. It's cool but not too cold. So the wine we're drinking here, the Douro, it's a blend of Rabigato, Viosinho and Arinto. And if you're watching in South Africa, those probably sound like members of Benfica's midfield, but they are actually Portuguese grapes, and they come together in a white blend, which you gave me some of last night, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. On the back of a very hot day of farming chilies, I think I'm going to enjoy it even more.
Cheers.
Cheers, Ella. To me, this speaks to wine that I really want to have with food. It's lovely and refreshing, especially because it's nice and cool, but it's got a lot of body to it. It's a big, full-bodied wine. There's a little bit of citrus to it, but there's some nice stone fruit to it, and it's a wine that suggests to me it's a big enough wine, it's a strong enough wine to be able to handle the heat that I suspect is going to come from the chicken.
Well, the heat is actually going to come from the chili that you made. There's very little in the chicken.
So for you as a chef then, is the art of chili getting that balance right where people are enjoying it without needing to go to intensive care?
Yes, actually, in the good old days when my mom taught me to cook, and my dad as well, they were both great chefs, they used to throw the chili in the food while they were cooking. And it gives it that extra heat, because the heat of the cooking and the heat of the chili, it actually, for some reason, makes it hotter. So nowadays, that's why the Nando sauce is available. You put it on your food, and you can put as much as you want. Put a little bit, or put none if you want. You know, I mean, it's absolutely your choice.
Now, if you're looking for something you might be drinking in South Africa, there's not a massive dissimilarity to a Chenin or something like a Verdalho, which also has its roots in a similar part of the world. So I think you can kind of see where this wine is going. The interesting part is, how does it go with the food? So let's dish up some of this chicken, which is made, and let's just get this on camera, Stella. I made this peri peri sauce.
Did you make this peri peri sauce? Well, good. I witnessed it. You know, so if you're going to help yourself to the chicken, it's a chicken breast, just trinchado. It was marinated for 24 hours.
Is there wine in this dish?
Yes, I put some Duas Quintas Douro, the white wine in it, you know, because chicken and white wine go together. And I use some of this wine, you know, in a sauce. If you use a good wine, you always tend to get a better taste.
I think one of the other things for food and wine pairing for me is that you like there to be a bit of a difference to the wine. You've had some, then you've tried the food, tried the wine again. It should bring out a slightly different character, but it shouldn't radically change it. You might think, oh, that's a bit of a different wine. But there, I still know it's what I was drinking, but it's a little bit fruitier because that spice has kicked in, and it's just refreshing, and it pairs for me really nicely.
Wow, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I mean, I took a chance this time, and it seems to have worked out.
This has been a great start. We've also got some red wine. We've also got some trinchado. Tell me a little bit about how you've done the meat.
The trinchado, I took a nice inch-thick rumps, and I rubbed it down with a special spice that I have, that I can't really describe because it's made up specially for me, and it's got a huge array of different spices, including the corianders and bit of Oriental as well, which is more from the Goan side, the Portuguese culture from Goa. You know, Goa was also a Portuguese colony for many years. And what I've done is I've seared it nicely, put it aside to rest. After it's rested, I just cut it up in the chinchado style. And then what I did, bottom of the pan again, deglaze it nicely, good red wine, a little bit of butter in this instance, olive oil, and voila, Bob's your uncle. We've got a nice chinchada there with a red wine sauce.
Now, normally when you're drinking this, would you pop it in the fridge for a little while before you have it?
In Mozambique, with this humidity in southern Mozambique, like you experiencing, I like to put it in the fridge for a little while. Then when you take it out, you open the bottle, you let it air a little bit, and it comes down to a nice drinking temperature.
Cheers. I do like that. If you've had the Alice Verloren Tinta Barocca, that's kind of the territory you're drifting into. There's a little bit of sort of musk and darkness to it, some lovely dark fruit. And it is just ever so slightly cooler, and despite the fact that it's not a light and gentle wine, it's not overpowering and super heavy, but because the temperature's dropped ever so slightly, it's sitting in a really nice drinking space, and on its own I'm rather enjoying it. This Trinchado though, well, that's our next test. See how they work.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that just, it elevates the fruit, it really brings it to the fore. And it's already quite rich wine, but just that little bit more so. A lovely satiny finish on the back of having had your Trinchado. You've dressed up 2 pairings here. You've done 2 very good jobs, Chef Selo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. It's my real pleasure to be cooking for.
So next time you are eating Portuguese style, maybe you've dropped in at Nando's, maybe you've made your own Peri Peri sauce as I've done, and look out for that coming up soon on the Dan Nichols Show. However you are eating your Portuguese, don't just think that a cold beer is the way to go. Sure, it does make a really, really good companion to Portuguese food, but wine can elevate what is already simple but fabulous, fabulous fare and just bring out another dimension to that food and wine experience. And that really is why we do exactly what we do. Well, there's my Daniel Craig moment for you. If you thought that chili looked hot, it certainly had a kick. Selo's chili in Mozambique, then this water is a nice refreshing antidote. But welcomely, because it is a very, very warm day here in Somerset West. It is also a quite warm day down the road in Franschhoek, which is where you will find Le Coin Francais, which is where you will be if you win our competition this month. It's with Bellingham, and all you have to do to win the competition is to go onto your social media platform of choice, tag both Dan Really Likes Wine and Bellingham, and tell us why a 5-course meal for you and 3 friends with vintage wine from Bellingham is a prize that should be coming your way. Why do you want to win it? Let us know. And it could be you off to experience Darren Badenhorst at Le Coin Francais, 5 courses, vintage wine, and some of Franschhoek's famous hospitality. Well, now let's head about half an hour down the road from here, the Cape Vermeer, into Stellenbosch and to Lanzerac. It's full of history. It's a beautiful, beautiful space as you work your way down that long avenue of trees, but it's below ground that I find most welcoming as we discover some very old wine with Wynand Lategan. The avenue of trees that gives you the sweep up into Lanzerac is one of the most iconic entrances to a wineman's estate in Stellenbosch. And once you hit the Cape Dutch architecture and the sweeping views above ground, it is glorious. I reckon though that it's underground where things get even cooler, because that's where I am right now. This is the top secret hidden underground bunker at Lanzerac, where I'm in the cellar with Wynand, who is host today. Wynand, lovely to be here, and lovely to be in a place with so much history, because the moment I think of Lanzerac, that's exactly what comes to mind.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks, Dan. Nice having you guys here. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Stellenbosch, and Lanzerac was always a landmark for us, even as students. Where we're sitting now was an old student pub. I think Lanzerac is always, for me, so part of the fabric of Stellenbosch, you know, and being close to town, you know, it's so icon, which is a little bit overused word, but it's so landmark, you know, so it brings back fond memories to various generations of people, you know, so.
And that sense of history doesn't just reflect the estate, it reflects your wine as well. And in fact, I'm looking at some of it here, and I've got this little bottle which very thoughtlessly you drank just before I arrived, which is not very nice of you. 1959, half bottle of Pinotage. This was released 61, the very first wine.
That's correct, Dan. Yeah, no, we're very proud about that fact. You know, if you go deep into Pinotage, we know the story. It's indigenous South African variety created by Professor Perrault. And in those days, you know, I think it took a lot of faith to grow the wine Pinotage and make it. And Lanzerac was privileged. You know, the brand was part of Farmers Winery in those days, and they decided to do Pinotage, or launch the first Pinotage under the Lanzerac label. It was fruit grown on Bellevue Farm. The vineyard is still there. So yeah, the first Pinotage came from grapes from Bellevue and made at Stellenbosch Farmers Winery under the Lanzerac label. So I mean, that storyline and that history is so you know, it almost warms your heart a little bit, you know, if you think about South Africa and being patriotic and all that, you know, so yeah.
Now, I'm probably not going to find too much 1959 Lanzerac Pinotage on the shelves of my local Pick n Pay, but there is a way of sort of drinking it, because the bottle next to it does look rather like the original. Tell me the story of this wine.
Yeah, that was sort of a project of love, you know, I would say. You know, when I arrived here in 2005, you know, the first thought or question, one of the first ideas that came to mind was to recreate something, you know, about the first Pinotage. And we eventually approached Bellevue, if we can have some of the grapes there. And so in 2009, I wanted to start, but for various reasons, you know, we couldn't get hold of fruit, but we kept going and then kept talking. And then in 2016, we started talking with Bellevue again, and we sort of explained the project we want to do is, in essence, recreate the first Pinotage. So we did a vintage in 2017. We did that was 1 barrel, and then we did another one, I think 3 barrels in 2018, and leading up to 2019 to celebrate the 60-year anniversary of the first Pinotage. So that bottle, that's a 2019 Lanzerac Pinotage from the same vineyard that we did the 59 in. So in essence, it's the same wine, just 6 years younger.
I get the sense from the way you talk about this that it's more than just you're a Stellenbosch kid. There's a real passion for the history of wine and the provenance of wine. And I think that leads into exactly what we're going to drink, because you've opened up some 20-year-old Pinotage for us to have a try of today. Before we do try it, what for you is the value of this older wine? Why should we be looking to celebrate this kind of wine?
Yeah, I think, you know, if you want to be a serious wine country or industry, I think it's very important to have to back your story up with tangible wines, you know. And in the wine world, if you can mature or age wine that can stood the test of time. I mean, obviously, I mean the cliches keep going. Good wine only gets better with age, but if you can prove it and have that history and go back, you know, if we drink this wine, you'll see in the, you know, it's a little bit different style maybe than we do now, but you can sort of reference yourself and compare and you know, and the French does it so beautifully. They talk about each vintage, so they can have the same wine on the same estate and the same bottle, same method, but you can definitely compare vintages. And I think that's important for us to show the world what we can do. This is Pinotage, which nobody except, well, 1 or 2 maybe countries, but South Africa is the country that do Pinotage, and this is the wines that we can show the world. Listen, we've got Pinotage that we can, it's a proper wine. It's got all the classic characteristics, and it's a good one because it can mature and can age and gets softer. It gets softer over time. So I think that's the beauty of that.
You guys make some terrific Cabernet Sauvignon. You make some lovely Chardonnay, but I know there's a great passion for Pinotage. So you're going to try some of this. And cheers. Thank you for having us in the cellar. As I do sample it, and oh, geez, already that's an alluring nose. Why 21 years on? Why for you is this standing out?
Yeah, I mean, we regularly taste the older wines, and this one stood out the other day. I mean, if you, on the nose, you can still, a very bright fruit, that's a typical Pinotage fruit, is still almost strawberry plums. And on the palate, so it's very much alive. And on the palate, you can see that softness that Pinotage gives, but without being flabby. Just there's a nice line through it. The fruit is still there, but there's a nice softness, but it doesn't fall away. It just carries on, So, I mean, you can imagine this wine with any type of, cool it down, have it in summer on its own, or with any kind of food. But for me, more about the wine itself. It's just the way it carries itself. There's the fruit runs through it, and there's a softness to it.
And it's also staggeringly fresh for a bottle of wine that is 21 years old.
Exactly.
In fact, I given the fact that you drank all of this on your own, I'm wondering if you actually drank that one as well and filled it up with something new. What it does, I think chiefly though, is this is a bottle of wine to give to one of those people who will look you in the eye, having never had a good bottle of Pinotage, and tell you that Pinotage is undrinkable and you should never have it. Give them a glass of this and they'll love it and ask you what it is. And then you can grin and point out that they're drinking something they said they wouldn't.
I mean, I think that's one of the most satisfying things, and I've been in that situation when, especially if you go to the UK or the British, they will not touch Pinotage. But once you put something in the glass, and I think that's where the proof is. The proof is in the tasting and in the glass. If you have this wine and just discover it and what it can be, it's a whole mind change, So it's not so much about Pinotage per se, but it's more about the wine, the inherent quality of the wine. So you can can have the same conversation about a Cabernet or a blend, or maybe one day old Shiraz. But in our instance, obviously, we've got the history with the Pinotage. So, I mean, I talk regularly with my colleagues that's also in the Pinotage, make serious Pinotages, and that's the aim with Pinotage. It's not so. First and foremost is make a quality good wine, and obviously that starts in the vineyard. I mean, we're in a lovely Jonkershoek Valley, and for us, you talked about the provenance and the terroir. For us, it's all about the Jonkershoek Valley. So all our fruit comes from here, and just to display, if you take something seriously and you focus, you can make good wine, or you can have a good product with it. So yeah, I think that's our aim, So hopefully we can achieve that. Just by the way, that 59 was not to rub it in, but it was a fantastic example of a wine that can.
You can't tell me that now.
And I mean, we opened that. I've got 2 bottles left of that, and 2 bottles of the 750, and we shared that bottle with I think 20 people, and each buddy had a little 2 sips of it. But it was just, I think it's just a privilege to drink that wine and sort of, let your mind drift a bit towards those time, So I think it's fantastic to drink history.
And that is exactly what we've done today. In fact, it's what I'm planning to do some more of, because allegedly there are a few more bottles of this. I'm going to go and try and break into the cellar and see if I can find one. There's a lovely spa here. The restaurant is great. The service is immaculate. It's a brilliant place to visit. But if you want to do one thing when you get up to Lanzerac, try and slip downstairs, come and find Wynand, try a glass of Pinotage, and celebrate something uniquely South African with a wonderful sense of history. Cheers. Some old wine and plenty of history there in the Pinotage at Lanzerac, thanks to Wynand. A beautiful, beautiful space, but even Lanzerac has got its work cut out to match that panoramic vista. That's Strand down the bottom, almost a Mediterranean hint as you look there up to Salari's Pass. That takes you over to Elgin, the Hemelanada Valley, more wonderful wine territory. Helderberg out that way. You've got Idiom and a couple of other spots down towards that side of it. It's a lovely part of the wine world. And here at Cape Vermeer, you've got terrific hosts. They're just lovely people, and you're guaranteed a terrific stay. You're also guaranteed a fabulous time if you win that competition with Bellingham, the chance to go out to Franschhoek and to eat with Darren Badenhorst at Le Coin Francais. Your last week to enter. Simply jump online, as I said earlier, and join that competition. You could be the lucky winner. Join us again next week. For now, from Cape Vermeer in the heart of Somerset West with its spellbinding views. Goodbye.